You got the iPhone, smartphone, and, it has music and, it has the camera and internet and all these other great things. But what if you just want songs, music, just something to listen to at the gym or going on the walk or a bike ride? You just want like the Walkman, the digital Walkman, so to speak. So you could have it and you could call it the iPod Nano, which has music and songs. The only problem is it only can contain so many songs. You want more music, so you have to invent something else called the iPod Nano, which carries a lot of music, a lot of songs, but there's a maximum. What if you want more music, want more songs, you need something else? You have something called the iPod Nano, which, it's great, it carries music, but there's an infinite amount there. And then finally the company says, you know what, you can't have this anymore. You have to go back to the clunky phone, but you just wanted the music. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, the Yankees make their first big move of the offseason, signing Amed Rosario to a one-year deal to rejoin the Yankees. I know not exciting there, but after the winter meetings where the Yankees weren't exactly that active there, I guess you'll take anything to this point there. So we'll kind of look back at the deal. And again, Rosario is kind of serviceable for the Yankees in the short amount of time he played for them in 2025 there. So we'll kind of give you the details of that deal there. And, you thought the winter meetings were slow for the Yankees. Some things got done. We had the Rule 5 draft there, which we didn't get into. Well, the Yankees ended up picking up Cade Winsquist from the Cardinals. Now, if you're not too familiar with them, we'll give you his numbers there. Now, these mostly minor league numbers, so you want to get crazy about it. But at least, again, the Yankees did something in this winter meeting there, so at least we'll cover that. And also picking up another pitcher, that's Drake Fellows from the Pittsburgh organization, signing him to a minor league deal. Again, if you're not too familiar with him, who is actually, I'll give you his numbers as well. At least kind of justify why Cashman had interest in them. But in bigger news there, and I guess maybe doing some crosstown rival stuff there. Of course, last episode we kind of poked fun at the Mets and kind of needled them there, kind of stuck the screwdrivers between the rib cage there of them losing Edward Diaz. Well, a day later, pretty much almost as we were filming, Pete Alonso also leaving the Met organization, bolting, going to Baltimore for a 5-year deal there. So it's kind of a double header there. So in one sense, you can make fun of the Mets for losing Pete Alonso again right after Diaz. But of course, this makes Baltimore stronger. Now he'll be joining the Baltimore Orioles. So now the Yankees are going to have to contend with him and his home run prowess in the AL East there. So we'll kind of look at that angle. And Rangers GM kind of throwing a little bit cold water on the whole Corey Seager thing. Again, I figured for a move, if he's available for shortstop, that's something I was championing there. Looks like it may not happen there, or at least he threw some cold water on it. So if you're not familiar with that, we'll kind of give you that background story. And as well, the Yankees, they let go, at least let their first base coach, Travis Chapman, walk away. Kind of blame him for a lot of the base running problems instead of not getting enough steals and all that stuff. Well, the Yankees have now a new first base coach. Now that the news is very recent there, but we haven't mentioned it here on the audio podcast, so we'll give it a little bit of time there as well. So we've got to look at the episode for you. It's the holiday season. I got the Santa hat on for you. So I have a lot of gifts to give you with a lot of the Yankee knowledge and Yankee takes and Yankee opinions there, so you want to accept these gifts. But before you open up the gifts, you got to do something very important there. As I mentioned before, there's the audio podcast version of the show. So wherever you get your favorite podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Subscribe to that as well. Get my takes on things soon. Again, the off season. You got about a month and a half to go before spring trainings and pitchers and catchers reporting there. So there's going to be a lot more moves. So you don't want to wait a whole week to get my take on something. Sign to the audio podcast version of the show to get my take quicker there. And if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on TV and you haven't done yet, I don't know why. Again, you don't want to go a whole week to wait for a new episode. Go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, subscribe, and get those gifts this holiday season. So the winter meetings wrapped up, of course, which we covered there. And again, the Yankees didn't exactly get a ton done, and kind of people have been criticizing Brian Cashman. And probably, I guess, people saying that, giving him a kind of a break a little bit. This kind of what's been going on in Metland, them losing both Diaz and Pete Alonso, which we'll cover a little bit later there. But of course, according to Cashman, again, there wasn't really much out there for him. Of course, the prize is Cody Bellinger, which they're trying to get him back there. But again, since it is exactly a great free agent market, as usual there, then someone like Cody Bellinger, who might have been kind of a sort of an addition there, is kind of one of the top prizes there, along with Kyle Tucker there. So I figure a lot of teams are going to be in him because there's going to be a lot of, a lot of back and forth for him to get the best deal possible. So according to Cashman, again, he got to mention that things are moving at a glacier pace, very slow. So again, you didn't see much move by the Yankees at all there, and again, people kind of disappointed in him. Which, again, there's not exactly a ton out there, and they talk about some possible trade opportunities, but he kind of referenced that the trades that, he was trying to get, other teams weren't interested in, and other teams trying to get Yankee players he didn't want to give up there. So looks like not much got done in that regard there. So kind of if you're a Yankee fan, you're grasping for straws for anything. And then along comes Amed Rosario, who, the Yankees traded for last season from the Nationals. They got him back on July 26th. And overall, it was good for the Yankees. Now, he did lose a little bit of time to the IL, so, he didn't exactly play a ton of time there. But for the time he was in there, he was decent for the Yankees, as well as, again, the brief appearances he had in the postseason, whether it was a pinch hit situation like that there. So for him to be brought back for a one-year deal, not too surprising there. Only 30 years old, so it's a one-year deal at $2.5 million. I like the deal. I like bringing him back there. And Cashman did mention that they are two probably left-handed there, so you want to get some right-handed bats there. So, you kind of feel almost the whole way he was going to come back there. If you want to look at his stats last year for the Yankees, again, it was kind of a brief time because, again, he also lost some time going to the IL. He played only 16 games, hit .303, so a little over 300. That's 10 for 33. Had 3 doubles, just 1 home run, and 5 RBI. Again, his time cut short with some time on the IL. But the reason they did bring him aboard and the reason they wanted to bring him back for 2026 is his prowess against hitting left-handed pitching. That's what his specialty is. And if you want to look what he did last season with both the Nationals and the Yankees, both teams that he was on, hit .302, 35 for 116 against left-handed pitching. So there's a guy attacks left-handed pitching, so this is why they brought him back. And of course, he's versatile. He can play multiple positions. You saw him a little bit at third base. He saw some shortstop. He can play second base if you want, even a little bit right field or left field if need be. I believe in the outfield is when he did get hurt one of those games against the Yankees. And of course, he's kind of going to be in a platoon situation probably for the most part with Ryan McMahon. And Ryan McMahon actually they want to tweak a few things with his swings, and we'll kind of get into that later in the episode. But of course, what the deal is. If the Yankees are facing a left-handed starter, unless McMahon has really good numbers against that starter, probably Rosario gets the nod there at third base. And Rosario at this point, again, 30 years old, he's a veteran. I'll say he's too old there, but he's been in the league enough. I think he can handle the situation. He's bounced back a little bit. Obviously came up with the Mets. So he knows the whole deal with New York, and of course played with the Yankees last season. Again, even though it was a brief cup of coffee, as well as played in the postseason as well. So he gets the whole deal. And again, he was also with the Cleveland Guardians, even when the Yankees were facing the Guardians back in the 2024 playoffs. So here's the guy, he knows New York. He knows playoff baseball enough there. Again, he's been around the league a little bit. So again, I think it's a good addition for the Yankees. 30 years old. He's not this over-the-hill guy carrying around a little bit. And just a one-year deal at $2.5 million. Not bad at all. So I think this is a good get for the Yankees. And again, a good bat just to have. Maybe someone to bring off a bench. Again, if McMahon might start the game against a righty, then they bring in a lefty to get out McMahon, then you can counteract that with Rosario there. So gives the Yankees some flexibility and good bat off the bench there. So this is a good move for the Yankees. I like it. Successful. And also, just the fact that, we don't know exactly when Volpe is going to be back, in terms of shortstop. Obviously, coming off the surgery, and that's all indications that Cabrera's probably going to get a lot of that playing time, at least initially this season. But Rosario, if need be, could play a little shortstop. Now, he only played like 1 or 2 games last season at shortstop, so he hasn't done it a lot since his days with the Mets there. But again, in a pinch, let's just say something goes bad with a Volpe, he has some setbacks in his rehab, or the fact that Volpe comes back and completely falls flat on his face there, at least something like Rosario, you could at least insert there at shortstop. Okay, he's not Ozzie Smith, we know that. But at least he could at least hold down the fort a little bit until you could come up with some sort of solution. So good move by Cashman. It's not the big blockbuster move, and waiting for the big move for someone like Cody Bellinger. But for an initial quick pickup, I would say this is a B-plus move by Cashman, definitely. I guess we'll finally close out this whole winter meeting thing and put it to bed. And I know one of the moments of the winter meeting that you're really looking forward for is not signing a big free agent like Kyle Schwarber or Cody Bellinger, for example. I think really the big moment you were looking for was that Rule 5 draft, just to pick up some scrub player off another team that really no one wants. So how it works, and we kind of broke it down, maybe a couple episodes and explained it to you. So basically, you have a player that's on your system for a number of years yet, but at this point, I think it's basically 5 years. If you haven't added them to your official 40-man roster, they become basically, you get put on the waiver wires, and a team could draft you and take you from that team. So that's why the Yankees decided to put Spencer Jones on the 40-man roster, because he'd been with the organization for a number of years, and I guess he was eligible. If the Yankees at this point didn't add him to the 40-man roster, then another team could swoop him and claim him. So that's kind of how it works. And basically, there's an order of, you could draft these players that they're kind of like, not saying they don't want them, but they're not exactly excited enough for them to add them to their 40-man roster. So they're kind of floating around out there in a team. If you want them, you could draft them, take them, and bring them to your organization. So that's kind of how the Rule 5 draft works. And the Yankees made their decision in that department, and that's for right-handed pitcher Cade Winquist from the St. Louis Cardinal organization. The Yankees also picking up now it's on the Major League level, on the AAA level, picking up right-handed pitcher Hansel Ricon from the Milwaukee Brewers, and then last but not least, Abraham Gutierrez from the Athletics. Again, the Athletics used to say Oakland Athletics, but now they're kind of the Sacramento Athletics, and sometimes they'll be the Vegas Athletics. But nevertheless, the Athletics organization. So the Yankees pick up 2 right-handed pitchers and a catching prospect. Again, where they're going to land, who knows there. I'm not going to beat the numbers to death there, but for Cade Winquist, you can say, why would the Yankees be interested in this guy? If you look at his stuff now this is a combination of AAA, and I believe A+ ball, which I didn't know that existed there. So you got the single A battery, the A+ battery, and the double A battery. So this is the numbers and it's from the Cardinals organization. Now you look at his numbers on the front part, 8-16 lifetime record with a 4.19 ERA. That doesn't look excitable to you, but probably why Cashman had an eye on this guy is his control stuff and his strikeout stuff, which is kind of impressive if you want to look at it. So he had a total of 212.2 innings there, so I'll say 212 innings. Out of that, he struck out 219. So this is a guy, he's averaging about a strikeout a little bit more per inning there, so he's got some swing and miss stuff, so that excites you there. Number of hits of 194 hits, so 112 innings, 194 hits, so that's less than a hit per inning, so that's a positive there if you want to judge a pitcher. And if you want to look at his control stuff, only 92 walks in the 212 innings there, so that's a walk about once every 3 innings there. So again, that's a good strikeout to walk ratio, and earned runs 99. So 212 innings, only 99 earned runs. So if you look at his the strikeout stuff, the control, the walks, the strikeout ratio as well, the number of hits and number of earned runs he's get out relative to the number of innings he pitched there. Here's a guy who doesn't give up a lot of runs there, has good swing and miss stuff. Now his record, sometimes you have control of your record. You can just be on a lousy team, or you could just have lousy guys around there. So I don't think you go too heavy in the record. Now, do you love the 4.19 ERA? No, but if you just look at some of those other stats I told you, in terms of having a strikeout more per inning, about a walk every 3 innings there, and again the earned runs and the hits about less than the average there. So that's actually pretty darn good. So you can see why they're excited about the guy. But again, at this point, he's just a minor league prospect. You'll know if you even make the team there. So that was, I guess, the big move for the Yankees in the Rule 5 rest. And the other 2 guys, I'm not going to really beat in their numbers a little bit. Again, that's like on the AAA level as well. So these are guys you probably never even seen maybe, but at least this gentleman here, Winquist, you can at least understand why Cashman had some interest in him. And I guess we'll stay on the pitching mound. And again, Cashman making another big move. Not really exactly a minor league contract, but Cashman's actually good at finding these guys around there. This time it's Drake Fellows. They signed him to a minor league contract. And this is kind of what you figure Cashman done. And he's kind of done this the past couple of years before spring training. He'll kind of find some guys, give him a minor league contract, or like with Cookie Carrasco, kind of give him a spring training invite. And if you impress, then maybe you make the major league club there. And you bring 10 pearls there. Maybe you find 10 oysters and you find 1 or 2 pearls out of some of these guys in. So not uncommon for Cashman to kind of bring a lot of these guys in just to test them out and see what sticks to the wall there. So not surprised he makes this move. But getting back to Drake Fellows there, so he came from the Pittsburgh organization, was there for a while, at 27 years old. So I guess maybe he was in there for a while, but they probably gave up on him. And at 27, it's like, all right, if you haven't made it yet, what are we doing with this guy? But Cashman decided to take a shot on him. So he spent 4 years in the Pittsburgh minor league organization. Now these numbers from last year between AAA as both a starter and a reliever. So overall his ERA on the high side at 4.41, but as a reliever, is probably what Cashman's looking at this guy for. His numbers a little bit better there. ERA lower at 3.86, but what you like is his swing and miss stuff. In 30 and 1/3 inning, had 35 strikeouts. So here, yet again, his guy averages about a strikeout or more per inning. So again, Cashman bringing in guys who have swing and miss stuff there. So again, you can understand where he had his interest in Fellows as well. In terms of his repertoire, it features a low 90 sinker, but it looks like his best pitch is his slider, which he gets a swing and miss on 50% of the sliders he throws. He gets a swing and miss, and that goes into the whole Yankee philosophy. Again, they like guys who would throw a lot of sinkers and sliders in the dirt and get a lot of swing and misses. Again, that's their whole mantra. That's why you have the whole situation of having someone like Gary Sanchez, who wasn't the greatest at blocking the plate, having issues there. So, because like the Yankee philosophy for a lot of the pitchers, take someone like a Clay Holmes, for example, is throwing a lot of sinkers and sliders in the dirt, stuff like that, and you need someone like an Austin Wells. He's pretty good at picking it and blocking the plate there. But if you have someone like Gary Sanchez who isn't, that's why you understand why. Again, obviously, his time here wasn't as long as it should have been there. So this kind of guy, again, this guy fits into the whole Yankee mantra of just throwing junk in the dirt there and getting a lot of swing and miss stuff there. So again, he'll be invited to spring training. We'll see what the guy got. And again, Cashman is pretty good at finding guys like this, whether it's like a Jake Cousins, taking a Tim Hill off the scrap heap, or someone a couple years ago like Chase and Shreve. Just finding these guys a little bit off the of other teams that have some good stuff there, maybe not being utilized properly, brings them there. They turned out to be at least a marquee name for a while there. Then he dumps them there, kind of a low risk, high reward type of play. And this fellow's guy is one of them. So I'm sure he'll be invited here. And if he impresses in spring training, again, there's room. Even look what they did last season with Fernando Cruz. Again, guy that always had some good stuff, but he had a lot of walks, a high ERA in the Reds organization. Comes here to the Yankees, and they make him probably one of the high leverage guys. Then going to next season, he's probably going to be the 8th inning guy. Cashman has a good eye. So if all the people want to complain about Cashman, but he does well and doesn't do well, he's good at finding these little pitches kind of off other people's teams, having them come here and having success, and then obviously burning that. And then once they're up to a point where either they're no good anymore or they want a big contract, tells them go bye-bye. I guess getting on the offensive side of the ball, one of the projects Aaron Boone mentioned for spring training is going to be Ryan McMahon. Now, of course, he was someone else who also came here via the trade last season. Third baseman, obviously, I think it was a good pickup for the Yankees. Obviously, problem with him, you see the low batting average, and he swings and misses a lot. Actually, really swings and misses a lot. So Aaron Boone mentioned they kind of want to fix him a little bit in that regard. Okay, he's probably not going to turn into Wade Boggs there, but at least want to cut down on the swing and misses for him. They figure maybe give him a whole spring training on the Yankee tutelage and Yankee hitting coaches there. Maybe they could sort of, quote unquote, fix him. I'm not sure how much you can. Obviously, he's coming into his 10th season at age 31, so he's still not really old there, but he's not exactly a young kid there. So I don't know how much you could change what he's been doing recently. But if I kind of look at his numbers there, it is quite daunting about in terms of how much he swings and misses. Now, the thing about Ryan McMahon is kind of weird. He's pretty disciplined at laying off balls outside the zone and doesn't swing at those. So that's kind of good. The problem is that the strikes, the balls in the strike zone that he swings at, he misses a lot of them, which doesn't make sense because if it's in the strike zone there, more often than that, you'd think he would make contact. Unfortunately, he doesn't there. So they want to kind of cut down on that, get him to make some more contact, which, I think he could. I mean, you understand the past couple seasons, you're playing out in Colorado, you kind of go, oh, yeah, you show up there, you play a little bit, you get a paycheck, the Colorado team's not going to go anywhere. Now you're with the Yankees, it's a more serious situation. You got a taste of some playoff baseball there. And again, I think, there'd be a situation where they can at least get him to at least hit a little bit more contact, have a little bit higher of a batting average. Again, I don't think this guy's going to touch like 260 or 270 there. But if you can make him like a legit 250 hitter compared to what he was like kind of when he came, he was like a 217 hitter there. I think that's at least a small victory for the Yankee. But you want to look at his swing and miss stuff by percentage there. And again, it is quite daunting. So if you want to look at it in terms of in the strike zone, he misses about 25.2%. So about one of every 4 swings he takes that of a pitch in the strike zone, he misses. So again, if you could cut down on that, maybe it's like 10%, something like that. Again, it's a plus for him, and he does have some pop and power there. So making more contact, maybe more doubles, maybe more home runs outside of the zone. Even though he has a good job overall laying out pitches outside the zone, though. But when he does swing outside the zone, he misses big time. That's 62.3%. That's more than half the times he swings outside of the zone, he doesn't make contact. And again, that swing and miss stuff outside of the strike zone. So if you want to take those numbers in total, his strikeout percentage ratio is 32.3% of the swings he takes. About 1/3 of them he doesn't make contact at all there. So the Yankees kind of want to cut that down. So where it's a little tweaking, a little mechanics, that's what they want to do. And they kind of looked back at some other former Colorado Rocky players that have come to the Yankee organization and had success. One of them, of course, DJ LeMahieu. Now I think DJ LeMahieu was a legitimate good hitter before coming to the Yankee organization. Another one was mentioned was Mike Topman, who's kind of similar to Ryan McMahon. They had some problems there, but came to the organization. Who was good for a brief while. Obviously, they ended up trading him away there. But again, when the Yankees brought him in there, obviously, was able to cut down on the swing and miss stuff and have him hit more contact there. So they kind of want to do the same thing with Ryan McMahon. Now, I know we've been beating up McMahon with some stats on swing and miss stuff, but we want to give him some kudos. And as I mentioned before, he does have power there. So his average exit velo last season was 93.3 miles per hour. That ranked 9th among big league hitters, right between Rafael Devers and Fernando Tatis Jr., two big names there. So Ryan McMahon, exit velo, in between those two big, fearsome, dangerous hitters there. So, McMahon, if you could get him right a little bit, if you could cut down the swing and miss and get him to hit more contact there, if you have that type of exit velo, obviously it can make you a much more productive player. And of course, we know his defense, which is stellar. Again, this is a Gold Glove caliber type of defender there. So whatever shortcomings he might have on the offensive side of the ball in terms of making contact, at least it saves you a lot of runs with his defense. Again, he was really good for the Yankees last season. And again, even though they brought in Rosario, as mentioned at the top there for a little platoon situation, I would expect him to get most of the starts at third base, even if once in a while he faces a lefty. Again, this was as A+ defense there. They just want to kind of fine-tune him as a hitter there. So, the Yankees looking to make, as a kind of Hal Steinbrenner gave his press conference where he, people didn't really give people what they want to hear in terms of, we're going to make wholesale change, we're going to change everything. In their mind, they feel like they have the players and pieces they need. They just make little tweaks, a little thing. One of them going to be the first base coach, which we'll get a little bit later. And of course, something like that, a little tweak of McMahon, just make him a more productive hitter. Now, a few weeks ago, we were both here and on the audio podcast version of Section 420 Talkin Yankees, kind of threw out the idea that the Yankees should explore Corey Seager, that's the shortstop from the Texas Rangers, who supposedly was going to be on the trade market along with Jason DeGrom. Figured maybe that Texas wants to unload some of those big contracts. Now, they unloaded one with Marcus Semien, sending him to the Mets. Now, they did pick up the Brandon Nimmo contract in return there, but he figures a guy like Seager and DeGrom who make big money, maybe they want to offload that. Well, it seems like the GM of the Texas Rangers, Chris Young, kind of threw some cold water on that whole thing. Recently did an interview with MLB Network Radio, kind of saying that whole thing's overblown, and actually Seager is in their plans, and they do want to win a World Series and want Seager to be there to do that. And they did acknowledge that, yes, some teams did reach out for Corey Seager, but again, that's kind of par for the course, nothing abnormal there where they're actually actively looking to unload him. So it looks like, the concept of him coming to the Yankees at this point, I guess, based on that, looks a little bit bleak. And again, I thought that'd only be a plan B if the Yankees did not sign Bellinger. I think that's their number one goal. But let's just say they didn't sign Bellinger and they kind of have this cash that we're expecting to use as somebody. And of course, we see, shortstop, they're not exactly thrilled with Volpe there. And of course, Seager, two-time World Series champion, two-time World Series MVP. That's a guy you'd want to bring in here, a veteran only at age 31. That would make a real sensible move. But again, according to this GM, it looks like Seager's not going to be available. And yes, unless the Yankees call and do something crazy and offer the stars, moon, stars, and sun, which I don't think they're looking to do there. So probably, unfortunately, based on that, looks like Seager's going to probably stay in Texas. And if you've been going on X or your other social media feeds, you might have been seeing some news that the Yankees are looking for a reuniting party with Michael King, who came up through the Yankee organization and, of course, got traded away in the Juan Soto deal. Well, I just don't see that as a possibility. Now, according to the Boston Globe, both the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles seem to be on in King, which makes most sense for those organizations. As for the Yankees organization, I mean, if you want to go by what Hal Steinbrenner said, so as what Cashman said recently regarding the starting rotation, it doesn't look like the Yankees are interested in adding to that just because they're kind of set right now. I know you have a few players like Cole and Rendon who may not be there at the start of the season, but will they be there shortly after? So does it make sense to sign someone like King who's a starter, have him in there, and you're kind of going to have a bit of a crowded ship? So it doesn't seem to be a big need for the Yankees. Now, would King just agree to come back and go back to his previous role of being kind of a high leverage guy or a long reliever out of the bullpen and pitch maybe the 7th and 8th inning, kind of being a Luke Weaverish type of pitcher in that way? That would be interesting, but I still see King doing that just because if you go back to reliever mode there, you probably get less money per year, you're probably going to get a smaller contract. He's probably thinking of himself as a starter, the bigger contract. So I just don't think it's a max for either team. Now, the Red Sox could use some starting pitching. The Orioles could use starting pitching, so that makes sense there. But again, if you're a Yankee fan, think King's going to come back to the Yankee organization, just based on what both Hal Steinbrenner and Cashman said there, very unlikely. And the big other Yankee organization move this offseason has been the first base coach. I know you've been sitting at the edge of your seat. You kind of have your ear to the radio and the TV looking for that big announcement. Well, it kind of got made a couple weeks ago and really didn't make a stick about it here as well as on the audio podcast just because it's the first base coach. But I guess since we have some time now, we'll announce him. It's Dan Fiorito. He's been with the Yankee organization as both a player as well as a manager and a coach going back to 2013. So, again, he's been in the Yankee organization for the better part of 12 years. Looks like finally get his promotion to the big club as the first first base coach, again replacing Travis Chapman, who the Yankees let walk away at the end of this year. And if you want to go back to that infamous Hal Steinbrenner press conference from a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned some dissatisfaction with Yankee base running, as well as some the Yankee fundamentals. And of course, one of them, you remember the big one was probably in that series down in Miami there, where Chaz was a double off of first base off of a pop-up, which can't happen. And remember, shortly after that, Chapman went back into the Yankee dugout, and seeing Boone and him had some words there. And didn't say it got heated there, but they definitely had some words together. And sort of, even though it was Chisholm Jr.'s base running gaffe, seemed like the first base coach got the blame for that. And if you just look overall the past couple of seasons, people just haven't been yet happy with the Yankees base running and fundamentals, stuff like that there. So making it there with Fiorito coming in there to take that role, in terms of whether I think it's good, and I think it's a solid move for the organization. He's an organizational guy who's been up, been in the organization for 12 years. He was named the 2022 EAS Manager of the Year. That's when he was managing the Somerset Patriots there, and he's a local guy. He's from Yonkers there, so he knows the deal. I'm sure he understands how Yankee fans deal. Not that really makes a difference there, but it's a homegrown guy. He's been with the organization for a while, so it's a positive move for the Yankees. Not a huge move. Again, it's all up to the players there. And again, base running, base stealing is kind of an instinctual thing. So yeah, you could have a first base coach help a little stuff like that. I don't know how much of a difference that would make. And yeah, again, Yankees have a couple of good base stealers. One of them being Jazz. Again, as long as he's paying attention there. Jason Dominguez good at base stealing. Volpe is good at swiping bases there. But we just see the Yankees have some weird fundamentals there. Sometimes we feel like, this guy's on first base and he had a double in the gap. Why didn't he score and stuff like that there? And again, overall, again, they're happy with Luis Rojas at third base, and of course they're retaining him for next season there. But I guess maybe because the Yankees kind of fell short against Toronto, someone had to take the fall. They weren't going to get rid of Aaron Boone there. So kind of how you kind of stick it to the manager, but not stick it to the manager, kind of going after their coaching staff. So we saw Mike Hawkey, the longtime pitching coach, getting walked out the door there. So Travis Chapman getting walked out the door there. So that's kind of ways he kind of wanted to the owner wants to show, the GM wants to show they're dissatisfied with how the team performed there, again, without getting rid of the manager. So, good luck for Fiorito, see how he does there. I don't know if it'll be an improvement or not there. Again, it's still up to the players. And this seems some with the Yankees, whether it's base running stuff, fundamentals, defense, they're still lacking there a little bit. And again, I don't know right now since you're not really changing players, what's going to improve there. Maybe if the coaching, a little bit better coaching could improve things. I don't know. But at least, if anything, good news for Dan. I guess leaving the best for last, where, obviously you're worried about Pete Alonso facing him, but of course, when Met fans are suffering, obviously you love it and you laugh there. So this will be the Pete Alonso ha-ha moment there. And of course, right after they lose Edward Diaz, going to the Dodgers for just $3 million more there, going to the World Series champions, they lose their homegrown guy, Pete Alonso, possibly the greatest offensive player they've ever produced, maybe other than Darryl Strawberry, going to the Baltimore Orioles for 5 years, $155 million, when the Mets seemingly didn't offer him any contract at all and more willing to let him out the door there, again, right after the Diaz thing happened there. So now he joins the Baltimore Orioles. And the Orioles and the rest of some of the teams in the AL East have been up in their game and getting strong in there. So again, the Yankees are going to have to do something to get up their game as well to counteract that. So he's going to the team that finished in last place last season. So Baltimore, if you remember, they finished in fifth place in the AL East, a sterling record of 75-87. That's 12 games under 500. Now, does adding Pete Alonso change the world there? A little bit there. They also made some other moves, also adding former Met Ryan Hensley to the bullpen as well. But if you look at some of the other teams in the AL East also making some moves, Sonny Gray getting signed by the Boston Red Sox, as well as Dylan Cease being signed by Toronto. And if you look at the Yankees, who face both Boston and Toronto in the postseason, on paper, the Yankees starting rotation, at least you would say, was better than Toronto. Now, it didn't exactly work that way in the Toronto series there, but on paper, the Yankee had the clear better starting rotation. Now, by them adding Gray and Cease a little bit, not exactly the case as much there. So, Boston and Toronto getting strong in that area, and Baltimore getting stronger now by adding Pete Alonso. Of course, Camden Yards, his ballpark, so I'm sure Alonso is going to put up some great stats there. Again, he's not really an average hitter there. Again, he hits around 260, 270 there. But again, with the threat of power, that's something the Yankees have to contend with, both on the road and at home at Yankee Stadium. So that's the episode. Hope you enjoyed all your gifts. Make sure to subscribe to the audio podcast version of Section 420 Talkin Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. Otherwise, you get put on Santa's naughty list. You don't want that. Make sure you have a happy holiday season. We'll catch you next episode.